All right, welcome everybody. And the goal here today is to help you find and pick a market without the stress. And you know from reading the Your First Dollar book that we are all different. We all have different entrepreneurial operating systems, and there are three or four key ones. All great entrepreneurs, but we have to tackle things a different way. And if there's one thing that stops people dead in their tracks, it's picking a market. And I think the core reason is because we equate it with a bit of a life or death decision, or instead of, as I say in the book, it's a, what sushi roll are we going to have for lunch? Are we going to have the Peking duck, or are we going to have the raw salmon? And if you pick the raw salmon and it's not that good, you think, oh, I should have had the Peking duck, but it doesn't ruin your life. It's just lunch, right? So that's important. There are a bunch of things that we need to go through. So what I want to do is check in with you and see where you're at with your markets, and also identify some of the challenges that you're having, because I want you to know that guaranteed lots of other people have had it as well. In the 12 years that I've been doing the challenge, this here is the #1 spot where people drop out. And for people with the entrepreneurial operating system, which is that very research, you're a high fact finder in Colby terms, this can be a real thing, because you want to know that the market's right. But how do you know if a market's right? This bit of wisdom, which I read in a writing book somewhere, is that you can only be right or wrong in hindsight. There's no way of actually knowing whether something's going to be right or not when it comes to this. Now, if we're performing brain surgery, I want you to know exactly what you need to do, right? Makes sense. But here, when it comes to picking a market and picking a segment in a market, it makes a big difference. So what I'd love to know from you guys straight away, first up, just type into the box, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to market selection? So just let me know. And welcome, Lucy. Me. Narrowing it down, so many choices. Knowing how to narrow, yeah, isn't that Marilyn? It's a classic dilemma. You have all of these markets that are potentially available to you, and segments inside these markets. Which one do I pick? And one of the things we need to get across today is it's not if you pick one, that means everything else is gone. It's we pick one to test and make it work, and then we can move on to the next one. So that's a good one. Picking the right keywords to use. Okay, Denise, old school. We'll fix that. So here we've got food is a broad market, but I'm having trouble narrowing it down. That's awesome. We're going to fix that. Getting it narrow enough. Max, another classic. Expert knowledge of the market, right? Because it's a fair thing. We've taught through school that to be a teacher, of something, that you need to be an expert at something. But as we'll see today, there are two types of people that when you're helping people, there are people who are experts and people who are on a journey, and they're both excellent options as well, but we'll explain that as we go on. So let me thank you very much for that. We've got a couple of others here. Oh yeah, look at this. Figuring out where to start. Narrow. Health and fitness, back pain, former athletes, personal trainers. Yeah. What's the best tool to research keywords? Oh, a couple of keyword research things. Spoiler alert, keyword research went out with neck-to-knee lead gumboots. Not that useful anymore. It really isn't. So that will be a bit of a surprise to you. So, hey, what are we going to do instead? So we can deal with that as well. We can fix that up. So let me go through. Here's the things that I see after 12 years of the challenge that cause people to stop picking a market. And the #1, which Max referred to, is I'm not an expert. Okay, so the thing, I don't know enough about this particular marketplace, or this thing. And if I'm not an expert, how dare I deign to help people in this marketplace? got a couple of things to do with that. First, there are two types of, as I've mentioned, information product providers. There are legit experts, okay? So there are people who are experts. But often the people who are way more successful, and if you think about the niche in bloggers and podcasters, they're what I call journey stories. So there are people just like you that are on a journey, and they're not even suggesting for a second they're an expert in the topic. They are just fascinated by it, curious by it, love it, very excited about it, and want to share their excitement and passion with other people and help them find cool stuff and help where they can as they go along the journey together. Both of those are equally legit approaches. Okay, so that's point one. Point two is the catch me if you can principle. Okay, which is, for a start, we all know you might remember the movie Catch Me If You Can, which is Frank Abagnale, I think is how you pronounce his surname, the guy who was the greatest con man of all time. And one of his many exploits was he taught an entire semester at Harvard. Right, he just pretended to be the professor, and he was asked after it all came crashing down. And I'm not suggesting you be a con man. Let's make this very clear. It's the analogy, if that makes sense. Anyway, he was asked, "How did you teach this class at Harvard?" And he said, "Oh, it was easy. I just had to make sure I was one chapter ahead of the students." So, just being ahead of someone, there are people who are even have less expertise than you. And in the book, in Your First Dollar, when we teach you how to understand a market's pains, gains, and jobs to be done, you do that over the course of a week, 10 days, you'll know way more than 95% of people in that market. And you'll be able to interact with that market in a much stronger and more communicated way. So there's a process in the book where you're able to find those differences between pains, gains, and jobs to be done. Now, where people run into problems with that is if you're too broad with your pains, gains, and jobs, like you just say health, well, somebody who's dealing with hemorrhoids has very different issues, pains, gains, and jobs to be done, to somebody who is trying to get pregnant. Very different, right? Very different. I can't even think of a crossover. So one of the problems people have when they do pains gains is they start too broad, and again, narrowing down was a big issue that you guys had. Another huge issue is, what if I pick the wrong one, right? What if I pick the wrong one? And this used to be because, again, we're looking at, and this is not your fault, this is the thinking that we have been given since we were in kindergarten, right? You had to be right or wrong. Don't commit to an answer until you know you're right. Yet the real world doesn't operate that way, right? We have to test a market. We have to figure it out. We have to see whether people are interested and whether we've nailed the pains, gains, and jobs to be done. We have to test that, right? We have to get into the market. We don't know. Trouble is, particular, and I'm not picking on you high fact finders, it's just this is where you get stuck. Trouble with us high quick starts is we're all YOLO, let's go in, and we run off a cliff, right? So we go, hey, Thelma and Louise, right? That's what happens. But for you guys, you're hanging back and say, hang on, that looks like a cliff, but we're not sure. But here's the thing, that cliff could be just a nice ramp to the promised land. We don't know. And we won't know until we try, test the marketplace. So a big part of this is understanding that behind all of this, I think, is this fear of failure. And it's completely understandable. Unfortunately, like I said, our whole schooling is about that. Yet, if we actually break it down and realize that all we're doing right now, all we have to do here today, all we have to do to start off our online business adventure is to pick some markets, segments, right, to test. So again, let me get some definitions here. So when I say market is like golf or health, right? That's a market. But under that market is a whole bunch of segments. So with golf, it could be, you could have demographic type breakdowns, age, location, male, female, all of those sort of demographic style breakdowns, and then you also have challenge breakdowns, problem and challenge breakdowns. Things like, I can't putt, I'm really suffering with putting, I need to learn how to putt better. I can't drive, I need to figure out how to drive better off the tee. I'm having trouble in the fairway, I'm having trouble getting out of the rough, right? So there's needs there. There's also gains. I want to break 100, I want to break 80, I want to lower my handicap. All of these, each one of those segments gives us different, and can you see that somebody who's trying to figure out how to putt has completely different pains, gains, and jobs to be done to somebody who's trying to work out how to drive off the tee. Okay, does that make sense? So all of those are elements of, you know, the issues that are challenging to people. So I'd just like to get some feedback from you right now. What are, you know, although either one I've mentioned there or maybe it's something else, what are the things that have caused you maybe to hesitate in market selection? So we've got here, you know, self-doubt, second guessing before testing. Yeah, not getting field testing in your head as opposed to out in the field is very thin. I feel as though all my hobbies and interests lack the depth required for a product or service. I'm so glad you brought that up, Robert, because that allows me to talk about Dale's Law. I don't know if this is Dale's Law, but if I say Dale's Law enough, maybe it'll catch on. But here it is. You ready for it? Every market is a market. In this day and age, every market is a $100,000 a year market. In 2005, when I started the challenge, knowing if something was an actual market or not was a big part of our testing, right? That was a big part of what we had to check, because there were plenty of markets that were literally not online. But thanks to a little thing called the iPhone in 2007, and then the entire mobile revolution, every person has access to online, every person has internet, and there are enough people with disposable income, 10 times the magnitude of anything we had to deal with back in 2005. Every market is a market. If Dog Parks of America, pottery valuation, you know, and the classic example that I use is in the old days, because markets were actually, a good market was not rare, but it was, if I mentioned something like dog training in the old challenge, all of a sudden next day there'd be a couple of thousand people doing dog training websites. Not a good idea. So what we had to do, what Frank Kern and I figured out was, well, we need to make up a market that nobody possibly can do. So we made up the market underwater kickboxing. Okay, who would do underwater kickboxing? Nobody, right? Well, guess what? Not now, but later on, Google underwater kickboxing. There's a whole training methodology. There's underwater kickboxing gyms in Thailand. It's a key training methodology to help people expand their breath capacity. It's crazy, So every market is a market. I'm struggling with who do I want to hang out with. Once I've built a community, and they who I want to hang out with. That is a big deal. That is, to me, a far more important question, Tamar, than anything else, right? Is that you've got to, because here's the thing, you're going to stick with this market. Once you have made, and all of a sudden you go, oh no, I have to stick with this market. But it is true that you should have a real interest, genuine interest for the market at large. In the old days, my first sites were how to have a Cinderella wedding on a pauper's budget, how to fly fish in streams, all of these sorts of things, and it was not stuff that I was particularly interested in at all. You could get away with that in 2005, not today. So great point. Okay, so fuzzy definitions is another one. Okay, good. So let's have a look at the positive side of things. What you need to understand first and foremost is this is a what's for lunch type of question. It's no big deal. Okay, all we're doing is testing a segment. And what I know from particularly people who've gone through the Your First Dollar methodology is this is literally just we're picking segments. And because we're picking small segments of the market, if that segment doesn't bite, then we've got plenty of other segments to figure out, right? And we use the Winterhaven method, which I explain in the book, to start conversations. But most importantly, It's not a life or death decision. It's just not. But unfortunately, and again, it's not your fault, it's schooling, right? We think, particularly high fact finders, we have to know the outcome before we move forward. And it's insane. When you stop and think about that for a second, that's insane, right? There's no way you can know whether something's going to work or not unless you try it. We get too trapped in our head. And so when we do the market exercises in the book, what I try to do is get you out of your head and onto paper. And it's great that you're here because we can talk about it too, because too often one of the negatives of this business is it's a bit isolating, right? It's just me in front of the computer. So having the chance to talk it out is also a great way of getting out of your head and onto paper, because, you know, your brain's trying to do the right thing by you, but, you know, it gets loopy, doesn't it? And then all of a sudden, nah, this idea sucks, and oh, you suck, and you get all this negative self-talk, and off it goes. So it's, you know, it's a what's for lunch decision. And we're just testing. We're just running experiments. That's all we're deciding to do. All we're deciding is, all we need to decide today is what are we going to test over the next 3-4 weeks, right? That's all, right? It's not a life decision. It's not anything that's too stressful. It's just, okay, what are we going to test? And when you get really good at testing, you might be able to test 2 or 3 things at the same time. But for right now, let's just do one while we're, you know, in this process, and we're just trying to do that. So it's just a test that we're working with. And I think the most important part of this whole process, and the most exciting part of this process, is in the old days, what would happen is you would pick a market, you do some market research. People talked about keywords. A couple of people talked about keywords. That was old school, right? You would research keywords, see where people were typing and searching out. Whereas what we know now is every market is a market, right? I don't care what it is. Feel free to challenge me today. It's a market. Okay, we don't need to choose that. We needed to figure out keywords because we wanted to see, is there a pulse there? Is there some interest? We know that now, right? We don't even need to do that. Far more important is figuring out where do they hang out and what their pains, gains, and jobs to be done are. That's the way more important question. And the narrower that you make your segment, the easier it is to figure out their pains, gains, and jobs to be done. Okay, so that's why we do it that way. But here's the best part about this whole process. Because we've refined things now, basically, once you have made the choice to, okay, here's a segment we're going to test, no big deal, it's sushi for lunch. So we're going to create, and again, this process is in the book. We're going to figure out we're going to create a document that we can give away, a little 2-page document, no biggie, right? Keep it really nice and simple. We're going to create an ad, right, to see if we can generate some leads. And then we're going to send them emails, and we're hopefully going to get some responses. And what's awesome about that is within a week or so, a couple of weeks at the max, you're actually involved in your market. You're actually having conversations with people. And that is so incredibly powerful because it gives you the motivation to keep going, you know, because you can actually help people. You know, when you're speaking with friends, do your friends always expect you to have the solution, or do they like just the fact that you're lending them an ear and that you're really listening? I need to learn this as a male. Does that make a sense? Does that make sense? Does that make a sense? Does that make sense? Right? It's all about, you know, you even providing an ear for people is fantastic. So that's, the sooner I can get you doing that, the quicker I can get you doing that. The quicker you're in the market, that will give you motivation. That'll give you an energy boost to keep going and to keep trying, and you'll get that feedback. And what's really awesome for you guys to know, because the book's been out for a couple of months now, this process has really been very, very successful. So, you know, what you high fact finders need to know, that by following this process, the ratio of success, in other words, finding markets that are responsive, because we know what to look for earlier on, then that makes it all the easier for us to be able to identify something and find a market that works. And that's what we want. And the sooner we can help people in that market, the better off we go. All right, so now it's audience participation time. So if you've got a challenge, or you've got a particular market issue and you'd like to jump on the line and work through it with me and get you moving in the right direction, maybe the best way to do this is to just type in the question box with we'll use something that we do in the academy. Just put an N, like a need, colon, and then let me know where you're at, whether you're starting from scratch or you've got a market, and we'll start doing that. And remember the old Robert Cialdini principle, which is, it's always have you ever noticed this when you're in a seminar and people anybody got any questions? Nobody raises their hand. And then eventually one person raises their hand, and then what happens? All of a sudden, questions go from everywhere, right? It's a fascinating part of influence. So first person up usually gets a good go. So Robert, you have put your hand up. So let's bring you on the line and let's talk it through with you. Here we are, Robert. I'll just unmute you. All right, Robert, you there?
Hey, Ed, can you hear me okay?
Can hear you great.
All right.
All right, so tell us about so you're having trouble narrowing down the market. So take us through it. What's the global market and what are the challenges that you're having? And let me bring up my little scribbles here.
Sure. So I went through the brainstorming 10-minute brain dump, and I found sort of maybe 5 different broad categories of stuff that I was interested in. But the one thing that I sort of thought I'd like to hang out the best and had the most passion about was board games.
Oh.
And, yeah. But so I had that question where I felt like it was too broad and shallow. In today's board game environment, there's so many board games, so many expansions that I feel like gone are the days where people were just into Monopoly or just into Risk or something. Now it's like you play
Squad Leader.
Yeah, but now it's like people play just 100 different board games, and maybe they only play each once or twice, every few months or a year. So I feel like I would have trouble diving in deep. Where there's so much information, so much free information out there because it is so shallow.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's write free information over here as well, because let me address that. Okay. First of all, though, let's see now. One of the things that, and I'm so glad you were first up, Robert, because everybody's doing this, and I should have mentioned it in my introduction, is right now, we really should be in a judgment-free zone, right? Because we don't know, right? You've got some guesses about, okay, there are people that, people tend to flip from game to game as opposed to, like I did in my school days, love Advanced Squad Leader, and there was just people who played Advanced Squad Leader, and that was it. Serious hardcore board games, right? Or you're right, they did Risk or what was the horrible politics one that was a great way to end friendships?
Diplomacy.
Diplomacy? Yes, great way to end friendships. That one.
Yeah.
But when you pulled something off, awesome, right? Yeah. So I get you, right? But all of a sudden we're doing judgment, right? We're judging, whereas we don't know, right? But if we just focus, rather than judge at the moment, let's just do and again, not your fault, because this is naturally what we do, right? We make a whole bunch of assumptions. Oh, I think people flit. I don't think people stick on a board. We don't know. But let's just break down some segments and let's see how we go. So what are the big segments of board games?
So there's different types of board games that are popular right now. Excuse me?
Yeah, go on. Such as
co-op games where instead of playing against each other, everyone plays on the same team and you sort of play against the board.
Yep, Pandemic.
Arkham Horror.
Mate, I'm just showing off here now because I love this topic.
You're in the net.
Yes, so co-ops, what else?
I was thinking of either two-player games or couples games. I noticed some people like games for husband and wife kind of
Yep,
things.
yep,
Uh, Party games, which are just kind of for more casual, non-gamer type games.
yep.
Kids games, and besides that, then I was thinking, then there also are maybe a few games that have the depth. Like Diplomacy is a really good example you brought up. That has, a very rabid fan base for over 40 years or so.
Yeah.
And, it's sort of like chess in the sense that people could really get deep, but there's not too many games like that have that kind of. Well, I mean,
Really?
well, I'll tell you the initial market research I did was basically just going through the Reddit subreddits, and I wasn't seeing a ton of activity on many of these except for Diplomacy.
What about collectible card games?
Yes, definitely that's something, but for me that's not something
But
I'm
that's
interested
not that. I was going to say that's not what your interest is,
in. Right,
which is
yeah.
cool, right? That's great. So, how do we find this out, right? This is so you've got these different types of board game, and there are some, there are some board games that have stuck through the years, or maybe there are people who just. You mentioned this market of people that just like board games,
Hmm.
because I would argue to you if you were to draw if this is the 80s, the 90s, 2000, the 10s, right? And here we are today at 17.
Hmm.
I would say board games have done this.
Yep,
Is
I'd
that a
agree.
fair chart? You agree, right?
Yeah.
So I think so. What of these areas like diplomacy, which of these segments that we talked about are you most interested in?
I guess
Just from
that's what
your own personal view, what you really like.
it's so hard to say. I'm such a broad kind of. I like
Yeah.
I like more in-depth games, but
Hmm.
I guess I feel like those aren't as segmented. You know what I mean? With
Yep.
these lists I have, because I'm trying to niche down and I'm trying to think of what
So
category.
when you say yes, that's right. So if you talk at what I call the strategic board games,
Hmm.
so these are your much more involved
Right.
Groganard type. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like Euro games and
Yep.
just game like let's say the kind of games that maybe are a little longer, 2 hours, 3 hours for the more serious types. You'd never play it
Yep.
out of.
Yep. And I'm just opening my phone here just to do you listen? Because one of my favorite podcasts here um, is three. I want to say three plays ahead. What's it? It's where are we? So there are a bunch of podcasts on this stuff, which is a good indicator.
Right.
Three Moves Ahead is a podcast just for people who do that,
Hmm.
for example.
The strategy games.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Three Moves Ahead. So inside strategy games, strategic board games, there are different types, right? Aren't there?
Right.
Right. So there's your, for, you know, 20th century warfare, right? There's your, politics
Mhm. There's
slash diplomacy. What else?
there's 4X games that are usually you're exploring and like Eclipse, like a space type game, or you're colonizing
Yep. Hmm.
all sorts of fantasy games.
Ah,
Terra,
yes, of course, of
Small
course,
World.
of course. Yep. Okay. So that sounds to me like you've got a topic.
Strategic board games.
Strategic board games.
Mhm.
Because here's the thing, mate. We're not. Do I know whether strategic board games is going to be a market that you could make a business in? Spoiler alert, yes. Um, but here's the thing, we don't know yet. But it's a great thing for you to test. And what's the worst that can happen? You learn the entire process, right? You do it in something that you enjoy, so it's hardly like I'm pretty excited for you right now. If I wasn't teaching this, I'd be off doing this research myself. Because
Competitive.
here's an interesting phenomenon. I call it veteran phenomena. A whole lot of markets like right now have people like me, right? People 45-ish, 55-ish, right? Who wanted to do stuff when they were kids and were too poor, couldn't do it, didn't have access, etc., etc. Right? Like I loved these strategic board games. Here we are, we're getting in a bit of self-psychology here, right? Small problem. I lived on the Woolshed Valley, right? The nearest town had a population of 3,000. And let me tell you, there was nobody else that played strategic board games.
Right.
Yet now, today, there's all sorts of online things which help you like you can play the board game and actually play online, right? There's all of these different things that have happened. And this has happened in guitars. This has happened in fact, in a recent podcast, I interviewed Scoob, who's a motocross trainer. His biggest market is vintage, right? Guys who weren't allowed to ride a trail bike when they were a kid because their mum wouldn't let them, who now have money and want to do this for a hobby. Right? You with me?
Sure. I still have like this one hang up here, and
What's
maybe
the hang up?
break down my barriers, but
I will.
At this, and even if there are all these strategic board games that I'm interested in, and I could pump out all this content, this is where the sort of broadness, even in something as narrow as strategic board games, I feel like I can't put out some sort of product or service that's just for strategic board games in general, because there's so many, it's so broad. There's so many different games with different rules that you can't put out something that applies to all. And I feel like if we were to put something out to one, it's way too niche. I don't know. That's my hang up. I feel like I love this, but
So how do you prove that?
How do you
prove or disprove that?
Well, I guess I could sit down and brainstorm and try to come up with potential product services that are more in depth.
No, I want you to get out of your head and into the marketplace.
And just kind of get.
Right.
I know people recommend talk to the people, see what they want, or see what they need.
Correct. Right. We just don't. But think about this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you don't pick something, you're just going to be 4 weeks older and no closer to building an online business.
Right.
Whereas if you do pick this, even if it doesn't work, who cares? Right? You're not going to internally combust. It's not like somebody's going to walk into the office and all they see is shoes and steaming carbon. That's not going to happen to you. Right? But you'll have actually made progress because you've learnt the process. And then the next time you do the process, you can pick something else and try it with something else. My gut feel is that there are many opportunities here, but it's up to you to test for them. Right? So rather than make the decisions, and is this a fun market that you'd enjoy spending 3 or 4 weeks? Does it make sense? How long have you been trying to start an online business, Robert?
I've been mostly focusing on apps because that's my day job, but I've been in the 30-day challenge on and off for I guess a decade or so.
Okay, right? So let's take 3 or 4 weeks just to have a look at this. Because I'll tell you what I'd pay for right now, and this is market research of one, right? There's all, like, I was Googling only 4 months ago, because I used to love Advanced Squad Leader, right? But the problem with Advanced Squad Leader is it took 4 hours to set the damn game up, let alone play it.
Yeah.
Right? It was insane, right? But I loved it. And so I was just doing, and I discover that there are these online tools where you can actually can play Advanced Squad Leader online, right? But I'm busy. I don't have time to figure out how to do all this stuff. So, and what I've understand now is these board game players, right? They're generic, so you can apply many different board games to them. That's just one example. I'd pay to understand how to do that.
You actually gave me another idea, because something else, this could be a subcategory here, is I'm really into board game organization. Like just like what you
Yep.
said, when if it takes you an hour to set up a game, that drives me nuts. So what I try to do is find these, like Tupperware or certain organizational pieces where it's already you put it away and it's already ready to go next time. So
Yep.
that's another possible
And
product.
what you've demonstrated is another part of the power of choosing something and actually actively going at it. Because often we call it the difference between deliberate and emerging strategies. I talk about it in the book, right? By actually getting your hands dirty in a market, you allow the emerging strategy, the thing that might become successful, you allow that to rise up. So does that give you some help, mate, in terms of going forward? I'd love you to do this because, oh my goodness, you've hit me right in the sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah.
My advanced small leader collection is just over there.
Nice. Yeah, I'll keep checking in, let you know how this goes. But
Yeah,
that'd
good
be
luck with it. But go through focus on the process, okay? So just get it done. And who knows whether strategic board games will be a thing or not? Spoiler alert, it will be. But it's great for you to learn.
yeah. Okay. Well,
All
thanks so
right,
much.
good stuff, mate. No worries. Okay, who else have we got on the line there? And Alan's making a comment. I can't wait to read your comment, Alan. We've got, what do we got? We've got Denise. I'm coming to you, Denise. Let's just unmute you. All right, you there, Denise?
Yes, I am, Ed.
Excellent. How you going?
Oh, I'm okay, thanks. And you?
I am very, very well. Thanks for jumping on the call. How can we help you today?
Well, Ed, I purchased a really good PLR product called about resolutions, and you can apply it to a whole lot of areas of personal development, but it was actually dealing on New Year's Eve resolutions. So
Yes.
I got a domain name about resolutions, and I have a feeling that I took it from the wrong angle, that maybe a better area of personal development and applying how you could create not just resolutions but goals to the whole thing. And I think I
Yeah.
took it from a different angle, and I'm trying to figure out what angle I could actually get into this domain name that I bought, or should I get rid of the domain name and buy something else, because I love personal development. Any area
Okay.
of personal development I just love.
Yep. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. And personal development is a big market, right?
Yeah, it
It,
is.
it
It's
can mean
huge.
yeah, right. It can mean so many different things. And our problem is, unfortunately, we don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to just do something in personal development. So we have to segment down. Now, the reason I've written this like this on the screen is resolutions, right? They are an angle or a method. Okay, they're
Yeah,
a they are something that you use to achieve a result.
yeah, I got that.
Okay, so right, so to avoid pain, get the gain people wants, etc. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
here's the deal, right? When you're starting from this end and going backwards, right? You're starting from product and moving backwards. Whereas where we really need to start in this day and age is come up with a market and work forwards, right?
yeah,
Because here's the thing, right? What you found is it's very hard for you to position this resolutions product that you've got access to, because it can mean so many different things to so many different people, because people make New Year's resolutions, for example, for a whole bunch of different things.
yeah, they
Make
do.
sense? Right?
Yes, it does.
So where we need to think about is, okay, here's who does this, so here's our product. Who does this help the most?
See, that's the thing. It helps everyone, but I don't think
you
I've
know,
been.
whenever I hear it helps everyone, right? That I have a
Yeah,
small epileptic fit in, and I'm
yeah,
pretty sure angel got down
yeah,
from heaven.
I do too. Yeah.
No, no. Hey, it's not. And here's the thing: you're right, right? You're absolutely right. But I don't know how to market to everyone. Well, I do.
No,
It's
that's the
spend a
thing.
bucket load of money and splash it
Yeah.
against the wall,
I
right?
was
So,
in a
so
really bad place when I did this because I was battling a really awful doctor and a social worker who were trying to get control of my mother's stuff. So I
oh,
had to go to court a few times to stop them, which I did. But the thing
yes.
is, I had to do something to get my mind off what was going on, and I built the site and I built the membership site and everything. I've never done anything like
Oh,
that ever, and I got it all
yes.
done. I got
Yeah.
it all done, and it accomplished something for me. But then I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh yeah, resolutions this year is a great idea, but I need to take it from a different angle. Um,
Yes. So we need to
and
go from
it's
market first
yeah,
and
that's
put it
correct.
down. So the very first thing is so it can help everyone. Now, let me give you something, give you a model which can help here. Right.
Thank you.
Most people when they think about, you know, and again, you know, as Alan pointed out, gosh, guys, you know, I am particularly gifted when it comes to art. And, you know, don't any of you, please don't be intimidated by the fact that I am, you know, such a genius when it comes to my artwork that, you know, it's okay. We can't all be as lucky as I am and be as gifted as I am. But just, you know, just don't let that put you off. Okay. So when we look at figuring out where we should target people, okay, there are three basic areas, right? First of all, we've got likes and interests. Because it's much easier to find people who are interested. It's a much more engaging conversation when you find somebody who's interested in, I don't know, koi fish, right? Raising those big goldfish, right?
Hmm.
When you talk about that, right? Then the second layer is behaviors. So things that I do, targeting people based on behaviors. Could be sport, could be exercise routine, it could be any number, whatever the behaviors are, or, you know, indeed emotional behaviors. The final step is your classic good old demographic, right?
Hmm.
That's it. Now, trouble is most people start here, okay, when they're testing. Most people start at demographic. Whereas where we need to start is here at the likes and interests. So here's the question. So you've already got something built, right?
Yeah, the thing is, my hosting company destroyed the site on me, but luckily I've got a backup. So,
Well,
um,
that's good.
yeah, so I'll get that back up online
Yeah.
because
Well,
if
but where do we want to focus first? My argument to you is that's good that you've got the backup. Where you need to put most of your energy right now is to, you know, for us to be able to get people to that site, we need email addresses. Does that make sense?
that's correct, yeah.
Right? So let's think about, we know we've got this product over here. We know we've got, you know, our resolutions stuff over here. But what we really need to figure out is, can we do something and create a some sort of, you know, opt-in so we can collect emails. And in the your first dollar book, right, we talk about having a conversation with people. Because here's the thing, if you can't have a conversation with people, they're not going to buy from you. Does that make sense, Denise?
Yeah, it does.
Right? So, and here's the great thing, rather than, you know, and once you've had a conversation with people, then you can say, hey, check out this, this might be a way of helping you, right? This particular, you know, resolutions product. So what's really cool is, so let's think about the resolutions and then work backwards. So
Okay.
who is a If you were to pick a Facebook fan, and this is just one way of doing this, if you were to pick a Facebook fan page of somebody, so you've got your Facebook fan page, okay?
Mhm.
So this is your fan page here. So the person here that you want to interest, it's a fan page they would like. So whose page would somebody that would be ideal for your resolutions program, what fan page would they like? Can you think of somebody off the top of your head? Somebody that somebody they would like?
I can't think of that Ed.
That's
I'm not
okay.
quite sure what you mean
No.
by.
Okay, so for example, when you so when you yourself, right? Who do you look to when it comes to personal development
Oh,
and
Tony
growth?
Robbins
Okay, Tony Robbins
and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean,
and Harney.
yeah, because he actually has got some great videos out on personal development. And my God, you know, you listen to him and your hair will stand on end and you just get goosebumps listening to him.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, he's fabulous. When you really listen to that different side of him, he's just absolutely amazing.
yes,
And I
people
guess
completely underestimate how smart that dude is. Like
he is fantastic. And
yeah,
see, this is
absolutely.
how excited I get about personal development because I could sit there all day and not get out of my chair and listen to them.
That's right, but unfortunately you'll starve, and we don't
Yeah,
want that.
I know, and the thing is, it's not helping anybody.
Right,
Just
exactly. That's exactly. But here's the cool thing: Arnie can help us, right?
yes,
Because the
yes,
type of person, doesn't it make sense that if he makes you feel that way and you think this resolutions thing is really good, doesn't it make sense that there will be other people, right,
absolutely.
who also like Arnie, who feel that way?
Yeah.
Here's the genius, right? This opt-in here. Now, in the book, we take you through a process called Facebook, and it's called it's a type of ad. It's a lead gen ad. And guess what? You can target people who are fans of Arnie.
Okay. Right.
Now, here's the thing that you need to understand, though. Okay, so we do this in the book: pains, gains, and jobs to be done of people who follow Arnie.
Oh, okay.
So there you have it. Right now, you've got something you can do the whole book process with. Right? Because yeah, people often don't think of it like this, but this is in personal development, it makes absolute sense. It's often individual based. So, and we can actually target, because I'm pretty sure Arnie has more than 20,000 Facebook fans.
I think so.
I suspect so, which means you can advertise to people who like Arnie directly.
Okay.
So then your job, okay, so if we're looking at people who like Arnie, and particularly his personal development stuff, we need to understand what the pains and the gains and the jobs to be done are.
Mhm. Okay.
And then once you understand that, remember we go into the book, and from there we pick the number one pain, because that's usually the thing, and we create a small little document, which could be a chapter or something out of the resolutions
Okay.
PLF, right?
That's correct.
So we've got our Sage document, and then we collect emails, and then we get, once we start building our emails, that'll give you the momentum to then start to look at the way of how do we offer the product stuff that you've already got. But we're targeting people who are likely to be interested in the resolution stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so what are your next action steps?
I'd go over to Facebook and have a look and see what I can find there, and ask people, well, could you actually, instead of doing advertising, Ed, could you um, like their page and get in there and talk to people in there,
Well, guess
post
what?
comments in there.
In your first dollar, we've got the entire chapter on exactly what you need to do.
Okay.
Right. So
All right.
because what the challenge was, where do I do all this stuff? I've got this huge personal development. Now we've narrowed it down to people who follow Arnie.
Okay. Yeah.
So do the process from there.
Okay. Rightio.
All right. And that's the thing. And here's like I was saying before to Robert, whether the Arnie stuff works out or not is neither here nor there. You've done the
No.
process. You've moved forward.
Yeah.
Because then you can do Tony Robbins, or then you could do Brendan Burchard,
Yeah,
or you could do
exactly.
whoever. Right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so
Well,
therefore I'll probably end up and have to get a different domain name, won't I? I mean,
correct.
because I'm thinking, see, I hate to get rid of stuff. That's my problem, and I've got this domain name, and I'm hanging on to that domain name like anything.
Well, yeah, that's fine. But a domain name doesn't make a business.
No,
Right?
so
I always point, when people talk to me about domain names, I say Google.
yeah,
It's the
okay.
stupidest name in human history when it started.
Yeah, it is,
I mean, it was
isn't it?
dumb. It's dumb. Like, there's just doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form. But now, of
Yeah.
course, it's synonymous with search. So,
Yeah. So
you know,
there's no
it's
way that you can actually still keep that same domain name, but actually tie in what people like into that
yeah.
domain.
Stop
There's no
focusing on
way.
the domain. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
that's the
stop
problem.
focusing on the domain for the moment.
Okay.
It's costing you what, $12 a year or whatever it is to
Yeah.
maintain. So just pay the
Yeah.
$12 and don't think
Okay.
about it. Don't worry
Rightio.
about it. Don't try. You know, it's like, you know, those kids sets with the circle and the star and the square, and you're trying to,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
Put the circle in the star and stuff like that,
Doesn't work.
right?
Right.
It may work, but you're focusing in the wrong area.
No,
We need to build our list and our tribe first.
just forcing too much into the wrong thing. So
Correctamundo.
yeah, so I can still upload everything I've done into a different domain name and just change things around. So that's not an issue.
Yep.
That's not an issue. Yeah, so anyway, thank you, Ed. I really appreciate that because I've been
No
struggling with
worries.
that. Yeah. Yeah, it
All
took me.
right. Well,
Thank you.
tell your friends. All right, good on you, Denise. Thank you very much. All right, I think we've got time for one more here, and we've got Kellen. So come on down, Kellen. I'll just unmute you here. All right. Are you there, Kellen?
I am. How are you, Ed?
I'm good, Kellen. Great to talk.
Good to talk to you as well.
All right, so talk to me. Where can we be of assistance today?
All right. So, one, hearing the last call and the idea of, you know, the market can just be people who like Arnie. Like that really clarified something for me, I think.
Oh, good.
But I've developed an offer.
You got a product?
So I'm not following the process. Yeah, I've got a mini product, a prototype product, which is all about reducing back pain. And so my background and passion is health and fitness and exercise movement, and I have a story in which I've recovered from back pain. So I'm trying to find a market that this would be useful for, because in terms of my passion, which feels like it's probably reversed from what I should be doing, but I guess
right. But it's not, again, not your fault, mate. We're taught that, right? That's the we think build the product and then think about the marketing. That's how 95% of business is conducted today. So don't feel bad about that. But yes, we need to work backwards. So now you've got a great you've helped yourself. So when we talk about market, the people, who do we tend to like as human beings?
Those who are like us, I suppose.
Right? Boom.
Yeah.
Check. So, what are like you?
I guess former athletes, weekend
And
warriors.
I was going to say, perfect. Remember the triangle we did before?
Likes and interests, behaviors,
Correct.
demographics.
Yes, exactly. Right. So let's likes and interests first.
Okay. So, like to work out, like to stay fit and healthy. This actually, thinking about this too, I've been wondering whether like this should go to people who are having the problem or people who are personal trainers who want to help others with the problem. So,
Either is good, but two completely separate markets with completely different pains, gains, and jobs to be done. So, do you want to go, to use the marketing terminology, do you want to go consumer, direct to people with the issue, or do you want to go B2B, helping the business to business? So, you are giving a system to personal trainers to build their business and help their clients.
I mean, honestly, both. There's the place where the B2...
Here's the deal. You can do both, no problemo. However...
Yeah, it'll be two different... Yeah, exactly.
That's right. You have to do one after the other, right?
So I'd probably start with B2C because... And that's probably just a confidence thing where... in terms of...
Okay, so let's drill down to like people who are like you. So like to work out. What else?
So yeah, I'd say former athletes.
Former athletes, yeah.
Male. The age range will probably be 30 to or 25 to 45 type age range.
What interests would they have? What interests do you have?
Now a lot. So when I had the issue and I hurt myself, it was all about gains with a Z. So muscle building, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So and when and this may sound absolutely macabre, and I'm a horrible person when it comes to marketing because I'll hear something terrible and I go, oh, that's great. You can use that. It's so good for marketing, right? But you don't have to go into personal detail, but how did you get the injury? Was it at work? Was it
It was a stupid gym move. Yeah, I was actually in the gym. I had been an athlete. I'd been a guinea pig of the personal trainers at our school, and they taught us a lot of really interesting stuff, and a lot of it was like to prevent injury. And when I left, when I was done with school and no longer their guinea pig, I stopped doing all of the stuff that was preventing me from getting hurt, and I just had a really dumb workout one day and was crawling out of the gym from like a warm-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So but here's
for your macabre,
do you see what we're doing here already? Right, we're creating all of a sudden. We started off with this huge world, and now we're former athlete. Now, where do former athletes hang out? Especially in America. How do they identify themselves? You said it. Starts with S. Starts with S.
Scholars?
Close. Very hot. College. School.
Yes. Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. Each school. Oh, wow.
Athletic program. Right. And what specific athletic program were you in?
I was a cheerleader actually. So throwing girls in the air, catching them.
Awesome.
So on the sidelines for all of the sports.
I'm being very serious about this for a second. How many cheerleaders are there active cheerleaders in the United States?
I really don't know. I've not actually looked at that one.
To find out. All I'm doing is finding a market to connect you with.
Sure.
And you could literally connect with cheerleaders who have injuries. Back injuries.
It's a really highly common thing in that sport as well. I didn't really think of that.
And I'm betting. I wish I had access to. Maybe somebody's got Googling it for me. Right? Don't. Somebody might be googling it, but I'd love to know how many active cheerleaders there. And I bet you it's stacks. And remember, if we can find a market where there are 1,000 people who are prepared to pay us $100 over the course of a year, it's a $100,000 business.
I'm laughing because years ago I had friends that I worked with. We were trying to start a product called the Ultimate Cheer Workout, and so I had a YouTube channel and put out YouTube videos on like injury prevention stuff, but it was all geared towards high schoolers, and then we realized that, cheerleaders in high school don't have money; their parents do. So, like,
and by the way, hugely lucrative market.
Yeah.
Because how much do the parents spend on? Like, if you're in cheerleading at high school, how much do the parents spend? Like, if you're in any way serious about cheerleading in high school, how much do the parents spend?
Yeah.
Stacks
would be good because
that's the
years leading up to
they've
term.
Spent
because they've spent so much money on gymnastics classes and teaching them to tumble and then cheer classes and all of
live real-time update. 3.3 million cheerleaders in the United States of America.
Oh man! All right.
I think we can say case closed.
I think so as well.
But that's a perfect niche, right? And inside cheer, but be careful, right? Because inside, college cheerleaders have different pains, gains, and jobs to be done to high school, to troop.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But here's the deal, right? Your program, right? Your back prevention and solving back injuries, it applies to all of them, right?
Right.
So you don't need to develop up 3 different products. You just need 3 different front doors.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Geez, we've had some killer markets today.
Thank you. This totally like changes the direction of what I thought I was kind of doing, but it makes so much sense.
Awesome. That is fantastic. All right, great, Kellen.
Thank you so much,
mate. Because that's a beauty. That is, we've had some killers today. That's awesome. All right, gang, we've just hit the hour. I apologize if I haven't got to your specific one. I hope that you've got some great inspiration from this and understanding different, we looked at different ways, whether it was in personal development and targeting people in personal development and figuring out pains, gains, and jobs to be done, to looking at people like us, just like we did with Kellen, or indeed looking at people's hobbies and things that they like we did with Robert with his board games analogy. You can see with all of those, it's about just moving forward, just taking a market and make it about successfully completing the process as opposed to finding a successful market. Because even if it doesn't work the first time, you've learnt an enormous amount about the process, and then you can try a different thing. Kellen might try a targeted lead generation campaign to college students, right, that are cheerleading, that have back injury, right? And then he might try a high school, and there'll be slightly different plays on the campaign because the pains, pardon the pun, will be different. Okay, so we just want to test those things, right? It's not the end of the world. It's just a lunch decision. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be placing a recording of this up online, and the audio version will be in the podcast. So make sure you've got the 30 Days Your First Dollar podcast. It'll be there as well. And I thank you for attending today. It's been great fun. We'll definitely do this again very, very soon. So, all right. See you later, guys.